What's up, everybody? I'm Caleb Ochoa, also known as NFL Caleb 22, and this is Betting the NFL. And as always, I have with me my co-host Derek Wesley, also known as DWeezy. What's going on, man?
Man, another week in the books, ready to jump back in these lines. Actually had a good week, finished in the positive. Uh, one thing I pointed out, moving into the player prop markets might work a little bit better for me. You know, Beginning of the season started off a little bit rough, found some markets where I might be finding some better angles and working those, finished with a profit. Now looking to try and parlay that into 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, definitely. Just trying to make some money. That is the goal of the show. As long as you guys make that money, then we're doing our jobs here. Um, But before we get into our five best bets of the week, we got to recap what happened last week in week number 4. We'll say what's up to my dad. What's going on? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks and just thank you everybody who is watching. Whether after this is recorded, so very much appreciate everyone. But we'll get into the recap of week number 4, and we'll start with the home teams who went straight up 8-7 against the spread. Bad week for the home teams. They went 6-8-1. Favorites straight up, they went 8-7. Bad week for favorites. Against the spread, they went 5-9-1. And then there was 9 overs and 6 unders. And guess what happened again? Once again, the Road Dogs dominate 6-3 against the spread. Overall, uh, the home teams 32, 30, and 31, favorites 37-26, but against the spread, home teams have been bad 26, 34, and 3. Favorites have been bad 27, 33, and 3. There have been 29 overs and 33 unders, so lot of unders hitting. But the main thing and the theme that's been going on these past, well, pretty much going throughout the season, but the main thing I want to focus on is that road dog number, and that is 25, 18, and 1 against the spread. Road dogs have been amazing this year. And I always bring this up like every single year, and does home field really matter anymore? Because we're seeing all these road dogs cover against the spread. Doesn't seem like much of an advantage, even when the home team is giving up, given the points. Doesn't seem to matter really nowadays, because all these road dogs are hitting. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a valid point. I think at this point we there's enough data that yeah, it's a legitimate argument to make. I believe that home field advantage doesn't exist in the same fashion that it used to. Now you could easily make an argument. There are a few teams out there that still can maintain an actual legitimate home field advantage. Um, but in a lot of ways, this boils down to things like teams consistently putting good quality teams out on the field on a year to year basis. And that's not always the case. There's plenty of markets and teams that you can look at that, at times have put together decent teams, but also at times have gone on horrible stretches that make people regret ever being a fan of the team. So, you know, yeah, in today's world, where when it comes to entertainment, regardless of where you live, regardless of what city that is, if you have a NFL team located there, there's the likelihood you can find plenty of things to do on a Sunday. And if the football just isn't good, then people are going to find other ways to occupy their time and spend their money because they want to enjoy what they're getting in return. And if it's not a good football product, people will look elsewhere. And so when it comes to the matter of is there still a legitimate home field advantage, my general consensus of it would be no. It's that simple. And I think some of that's reflected in one, what you're seeing with just the numbers that are presented, but also it raises the question: how do the sports books react to this? Because I hadn't noticed much of a change over the past couple of years, just from the general sense of a road dog as far as spread or anything like that. But in the past, it was rule of thumb 3 points for home field. Well, if that's not the case anymore, you know when you see a spread and you see a -6.5 or -5.5 or something like that, do you ask yourself, are they more saying this is really a touchdown game, or an 8 point game, something like that? Because it's not 3 points. You're not, so it it's definitely something to watch. It's definitely something that seems to be profitable. You find those trends, you got to stick with them. And being 7, 8 games over 500 is definitely a trend that has some legitimacy to it.
Yeah, and I was trying to stick to that trend last week, but I just happened to pick the three teams that did not cover against the spread. The three road dogs that did not cover. I just had to pick all the wrong ones. Um, but that goes to my record last week, which was god awful because I tried to stick with the road dogs, and I just, like I said, I picked every single one wrong that there was. Um, but yeah, I was I only covered, well, depending on what number you got, I only really covered on the Saints game. They were getting either 2 or 2.5, so that can either be considered a push or a cover. And yeah, and but like I said, they only covered because, like I said, they were two evenly matched teams. They were divisional rivals. It was going to be a close game, and that's why you saw the tight point spread, and they kind of hit it right on. It was kind of around the 1.5, the 2 to 2.5, depending where you were looking, and it would hit right on that 2 point, uh, difference in the score. So the odd makers had it right on point on that one, and that's really the only one that I was even good on, and the rest, yeah, the all the I was trying to go with the road dogs. The road dogs did not come through for me in any of those. Um, but the one I was worst on wasn't one any of those road dogs. It was the one favorite that I picked, and that was the New York Jets against the Broncos. They were 7 point favorites. The Jets played absolutely terrible. Um, and I just couldn't believe I just couldn't believe that Bone Hayes can get two in a row, and believe that the Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense would look so poor after they looked so good the week before against the Patriots. But yeah, they couldn't get really anything going. Rodgers getting sacked like crazy. He was wasn't making good throws, and Bo Nix got the win again. It is what it is. Didn't think that was gonna happen. I thought they were gonna stomp him out like they did in the Patriots the previous week, but I was on the wrong side of that one. But how was your week number four?
Well, like I said last week, I was taking a look at the player prop markets out there. It's still early in the week, so not everything is available, but definitely markets you can find some legitimate value. Ended up going 3-2 for my first winning week on the season. Um, as far as bad bet had to come in with the Thursday night game where I actually saw both my losses because I had two plays in that game. But I should have been listening to my man Caleb. Brandon Cooks is, I mean,
He's
he
washed.
was on the money with it.
I
Like
mean,
he,
he's washed.
well, I
Uh,
don't even know if so much wash, but just he's not utilized within the offense.
he's not. He
One
hasn't
catch,
been since
one
he got
catch,
here.
16 yards on the night. You know, and that was that. Now, as
Now
far
he's
as
hurt, so that's even worse.
well, you ain't got to worry about me betting on him this week, that's for sure. But it does take away the possibility of trying to target any potential unders that might be out there for him in the future. Um, but as far as something that might have been my best bet, I think 2 weeks in a row had to be Lamar Jackson coming through for me. Now, anybody watching the game saw, first play of the game for the Baltimore offense, Derrick Henry up the middle, off to the side, 80 something yards for a touchdown. Now, yes, I'm sitting with a Lamar Jackson anytime TD prop, which for a QB, of course, means you got to get it on the ground rushing TD. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see a run heavy game where Henry was being productive because that meant the defense would have to focus more on him and less on Lamar Jackson. And as I've kind of mentioned before, when you're dealing with a running quarterback like a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, somebody that's a legitimate threat in the run game, um, once you get inside that red zone and that 10-yard line, there's a number of different ways that they can score with their feet. And that's exactly what happened. Lamar Jackson on a 9-yard run. The game was pretty much put away. And cash, I believe, plus 160. Always nice when you can cash those plus tickets. And, like I said, it's 2 weeks in a row where, Lamar Jackson probably was my easiest bet on the week.
Well, so yeah, good. Me bad week, good. You good week. That's why we always say you can go with my page, you can go with Derek's picks, or you can just fade us both, and yeah, that might work out for you too. But either way, as long as you're making money, then we're happy. Uh, Before we get into our week 5 best bets, um, if you guys can hit the like button on this video, you can subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Um, we very much appreciate that. But now, um, we will get into our week 5 best bets. But I got to say, I did not like the matchups this week. This is a bad week of matchups. I gotta say these are some terrible games to me. And the spreads are even worse. So I don't feel super confident in this week's picks, but it was pretty slim pickings there. Um, I know I picked all road dogs, mostly road dogs. Trying to go with the trend, and guess what? I'm going to do it again because the trend is still going to continue into this week. So I'm going to go majority road dogs. I'm just hoping that these are going to be the right ones this time.
Oh,
But since
absolutely. That's the rule with the trend. Just because you went to it one time and it didn't work out for you doesn't mean you get to just bash the trend. You gotta, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, you got to give it at least 2 or 3 goes to have an accurate depiction on if a trend is dying or falling off. Because nobody said this was perfect, but hitting more times than not is definitely noticeable. You got to be willing and able to accept those times when it doesn't hit if you want to be able to reap the rewards of some of these trends that may exist out there.
and since you had the better week, you can go first with your first pick.
All right, well, to kick things off, I'm gonna be going to the Thursday night game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm sticking with the player prop markets this week again, and I'm looking at Chris Godwin over 66.5 receiving yards. This is a number that he's cleared 3 out of the 4 games this season, and we're seeing what looks to be, a renewed and revived Chris Godwin, a player that had been struck down with injuries over the past couple of years. And in a lot of ways, I think they're utilizing him more as the number 1 wide receiver. Yes, Mike Evans is still that deep threat, still, a touchdown vulture. Not a bad look if potentially lean towards playing an anytime touchdown for Mike Evans. Probably still find a plus number. But I really, as from a number standpoint, we're seeing a lot of targets, a lot of receptions out of Chris Godwin. And where the number's sitting at with 66.5, he could easily go off for 100. He, you know, you can break down the math. One big play could easily get him halfway to covering this number, and 4 or 5 receptions for 7, 8, 9 yards, and you're talking about clearing this number. It doesn't take an incredible day to cover that total, and with the way that the Buccaneers offense has been playing, even in a scenario where they might find themselves behind in the game, you're talking about throwing the ball more and maybe even some softer coverages, meaning it could very likely be easier to cover this number in some sort of blowout where the Buccaneers find themselves down by multiple scores. And I was looking at things before the numbers came out. I kind of expected this number to come out around, the mid 60s, not much higher than, 70. And sure enough, that's right where we see it at with 66 and a half, playing the over.
Yeah, I like that bet. Obviously, you see how well Baker Mayfield's been playing the early part of this season, so I definitely can get it to Chris Godwin enough times, and it's just all about targets, who they're targeting in this game, um, and yeah, that's pretty much what you have to count on when you're doing that type of bet. But I'll get to my first pick, and that will be your Carolina Panthers +4 against at the Chicago Bears. It's been a bit of mixed results fading Caleb Williams because I said I was going to do that, and I'm going to continue to do that. But if it were not for the Bears defense, this would be hitting 100%. You know, by fading Caleb. But this matchup against Panthers and Dalton has been playing well on his first two starts here. Um, Offense obviously has looked better, but it was their defense that really couldn't stop the Bengals. But I don't think that's going to be a problem against the Bears because Caleb Williams really hasn't been very accurate. He's turned the ball over a lot, and probably going to do the same in this game. The Bears' offense, just their offense, because the score can look different because their defense has scored some points for them, but their offense alone has only scored over 20 points just one time, and that was last week. So it's just not getting any better. It's been pretty bad for the first 4 weeks, and I don't see it getting better in this game. I think the Panthers can cover the spread because Caleb just is going to turn the ball over. I mean, that's what he does. That's what he's shown to do, and that's where the Panthers, I think, can take advantage. And as long as the Panthers don't turn over the ball to the Bears defense, it's going to be tough. Like I said, they're a really good defense. But as long as they, you know, don't make mistakes like that, then I definitely think they can cover the 4 point spread.
Yeah, that's a very interesting stat that you pointed out with the offense only scoring over 20 points in one game, because you look at this small sample size that we have with Andy Dalton under center for the Carolina Panthers. That offense is clicking and humming. Like you said, it was
And
the defense.
that's also with the fact that their defense does turn the ball over a lot and gives them short fields, and they still can't score a lot.
See, and you know, as you said, it was defense that lost the game for the Panthers in that Cincinnati game. You could make the argument, points were left on the field by the Carolina Panthers. Coming out with the opening drive, fourth and goal on, right there on the goal line, failed to punch it in. From a team aspect and a fan aspect, definitely enjoyed the renewed vigor and fight in the team and the coaching staff. I forget the exact stat, but in the game prior, they were on an extremely long drought of the longest drought uh, currently to score a touchdown on their opening drive. Well, sure enough, if Dandy Dalton didn't walk the ball downfield and score a touchdown. So coming into the next game, I can't be, mad that maybe the coaching self, coaching staff and team were feeling themselves a little bit. Fourth and one, got to go for it. So yeah, there was definitely the argument that there were some points left out on the field by the offense, and so it'll be a real question: will Chicago's offense be able to keep up with the Panthers if we see what we've gotten in the past 2 weeks? And the fact that you're getting +4 on that game makes it a highly interesting play, because yes, the Panthers could lose this game by a field goal. That's a possibility. Maybe we see a little bit of a lower scoring game somewhere in that 24-21 range. But having that +4, being able to cover the field goal, I think makes that position a lot stronger. Now to move into my next one, it's a player that we've talked about a little bit, and I highlighted at the beginning of the season. going to the Buffalo Bills and James Cook with the anytime touchdown. This coming in at right at even money, plus 100. Um, I mentioned it before. He's been utilized very heavily within the offense, both in the rushing aspect, also in the receiving game. It was something that I expected to come out of the team and offensive coordinator Joe Brady, and that's what we've seen basically throughout the first 4 games of the season. Now, in the game against the Ravens, they did fall behind early and find themselves with a large deficit. So his utilization in the game plan did alter a bit. But if you look at the 3 prior games, there's definitely been a heavy use and heavy involvement. And the man has not been afraid of finding the end zone. So being able to get this number, at even, not having to pay any juice on it, definitely makes it a lot easier to play. James Cook, anytime TD. All I need is one.
Yeah, definitely when a team gets them kind of embarrassed on national television, they're just gonna want to put it on the next team that they faced and to forget about it. So they're gonna want to come out the gate being explosive on offense, do what they do, which is relying on the run game and scoring that way. So I definitely think they're gonna have like an offensive explosion against the Texans. So that definitely is in favor for James Cook scoring one there. But I'll get to my second pick of the week, and that is the Indianapolis Colts +3 at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yeah, I mean, I think you just have to keep betting against the Jaguars. I mean, until they show you that they can actually win a game, which they
I
haven't
truly
done.
question why the Colts are an underdog in this game. I
Yeah, I was
think,
just about to make that point. I couldn't believe what indication that the odds makers have that they should be a favor against anybody in the NFL when they haven't won a game since halfway through of last year. It doesn't make any sense that they would be a whole 3-point favorite, even when they're at home. It still doesn't make any sense. Honestly, because Joe Flacco looks better than than Anthony Richardson. That's if he will start in this game. Hopefully, he does. That'll make this bet a lot more better for me because he looked more consistent than what Anthony Richardson does. It's like and he like make the best throws, but then make the dumbest decisions um,
yeah,
throughout the game.
Richardson is definitely, the more unpolished of the two. And especially, spending most last season hurt definitely hurts that just that side of the game because there's only so much that you can learn and absorb off the field, and if you're not able to apply it on the field actively, not to say that you don't understand it or don't or you pay attention to it, but it's hard to actualize those things when you're not using them in the manners intended. We say it all the time. you know Practice and preseason and all that's all good and well, but you don't know how somebody's truly going to react until you get in the actual game and people are getting actually hit.
Yeah, and Trevor Lawrence had his like best game last week, and he still only threw for 169 yards. So that just tells you how bad his season has been. Um, they just been pretty much struggling everywhere, both offense, defense, um, and at least the Colts lean on their run game. We don't know if Jonathan Taylor is questionable. Hopefully he plays. Um, I'm making a bet that he will. And Jags 3-7 against the spread last 10 games, so been pretty awful. So I just don't know how they cover as a favorite. And I don't even think they're going to win this game. So just keep betting against the Jags until they show you they can actually win.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm right there with you. And why is this team the underdog, especially by 3 points? Like, if you were to say 1, 2 points, okay, you're splitting hairs there. You could just make it a pick 'em and you're not. But okay, whatever. But to say that you're getting a push on a field goal, I don't see how this team in the Colts is that much worse than the Jaguars. As you said, was 3-7 in the last 10 against the spread.
Yep.
I mean, that's right up there with fading the Panthers to win with Bryce Young under center. Now, not to say that they'll win the game outright, but you definitely feel more comfortable about them covering spread. Uh, and so, Jaguars might be making an argument for the worst team in the league at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, moving into my next one, y'all heard me talk good about the Panthers. Well, now I got to highlight some of the bad because I'm going to DeAndre Swift in the anytime touchdown. Uh, as I mentioned before, a great market to get plus money. This one coming in at plus 110, just slightly into plus territory, but still, that has a lot to do with the fact that, as we were mentioning before, it's going to be the Panthers defense that wins or loses this game for them. And a major problem for the Panthers is the run game. They are with the team is without for the season Derek Brown, the defensive tackle, Shaq Thompson, Achilles injury last week, done for the season. So there's definitely a lot of question marks when it comes to the ability of the defense when up the middle. And we saw last week DeAndre Swift break out and maybe find a groove and a rhythm in this offense. The Panthers have shown that they're struggling with the run game and handling uh, the running backs a little bit, and a dynamic player like Swift. I do think there's a high probability that he gets in the end zone. That's a big reason why we see this number at plus 110 instead of maybe around plus 150, plus 200, depending on the player you might be looking at.
We'll say what's up to Jay, and he says, Panthers and the injury bug are married in a serious relationship.
I'm telling you, they wiped that thing up quick this season.
Yeah, I feel like that's happened to a lot of teams. I mean, even with my Cowboys, they have like four starters hurt. So I just feel like it's just going around the entire league right now. But for my next bet, I got the my only favorite of the week, and that's the Washington Commanders -3 at home versus the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, Sean Watson has been pretty terrible throughout the first four games. Just coming off the loss to the lowly Raiders, where their dysfunctional offense, you know, through a bunch of mistakes and could only muster up just 16 points against that Raiders defense. I think that was without Max Crosby. I think he wasn't in for that game. I think he was hurt, so that's pretty bad. The last couple of games, the Commanders obviously have caught fire behind their rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. They just put up 42 against the Cardinals after putting up 38 against the Bengals. So it seems like they have no problems scoring points. So a 3 point spread, I don't think is too much to ask for them when they can put up scores like they have been putting up. Browns won't be able to really. I just don't think they're going to be able to stop their momentum that they've been gaining in the last few weeks. And Dan Quinn's defense, obviously, I know what his defenses are capable of. I think we'll certainly be able to get pressure on Watson. And as there's the Cleveland's line is a pretty much mess. I mean, even we got pressure. We haven't got pressure since we played Cleveland. Um, and yeah, Browns 1-5 against the spread last 6 games. So definitely don't think they're going to cover against the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, this is one, I might actually end up playing this spread before Sunday rolls around. A great instance of where potentially, catching a hot team early. with what the Washington offense has been able to do the past couple of weeks. Kind of similar scenario to what we've seen out of the Panthers, where in a game that's a shootout, there's more probability of them winning that game than one where they may have to rely on the defense to make a stop and get on the ball, or just simply keep the other team out of the end zone. So, when you're talking about having the rookie of the year on your offense, you're expecting to see some points and some high level production, especially when that player's at the quarterback position. And, so far that seems to be what we're seeing. And a low spread like that um, in this matchup, clearly Deshaun Watson has forgotten how to play football. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it.
He had
That
it
thing,
massaged out of him, basically.
man, like the story just writes itself and in all the wrong ways. But yeah, definitely, Cleveland's a team that I think people can look at to fade in a number of different ways, whether you're talking about potentially team total unders, maybe not necessarily in this scenario specifically, but in an instance where they're going up against a better defense, I definitely think you could look at some team total unders when it comes to Cleveland in general. And so, with an offense that seems to be clicking, you you got a young rookie quarterback who's feeling himself at the moment. You got a wide receiver who probably feels like that he's finally got a legitimate quarterback throwing him the ball. Uh, a lot of things are going right in Washington, so it would not be hard to cover that -3. Now, moving on to my next one, going to another rookie, going all the way out to Arizona as they take on the 49ers and Marvin Harrison in the anytime touchdown market. Now, seeing plus 160 on this number, like I mentioned, before, uh, nowhere near even money or even potentially paying any juice on this prop. Slightly less probable, is what the book's saying. But we're also talking about basically the number one wide receiver in Arizona. And there's definitely a growing connection between Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. Number of targets and receptions. There was talks in the murmur after week one, and the man has just gone off since. So in the do I expect them to win this game? No. Could this be a TD that's picked up in garbage time? Absolutely. But fortunately for us, the books don't get to dictate when that TD occurs, just that it occurs. So plus 160, Marvin Harrison Jr. getting the TD. Hopefully it happens early in the game and they don't make me sweat.
And I'll be on that same game, and I will take the Arizona Cardinals plus 7.5 at the San Francisco 49ers. And this is kind of what I was talking about when I said the matchups were pretty terrible this week. I don't even feel very good about this pick, but I just feel better, I guess, better about it than the rest of the game matchups that they had and the rest of the spreads that I saw. I felt the least bad about this one, but I do like to stick to certain rules. Obviously, road dogs have been big this year, but also when there's a big underdog in a divisional matchup, usually the underdog usually is on the right side of that. So there's a big spread here with two divisional rivals. So a lot of the time you should go with the underdog, and that's really the biggest justification I have for this pick. Kind of just going along with the numbers, because I obviously we know 49ers have the superior team and talent on their side.
Well, from an
Um,
offensive standpoint, you could make the debate that with the injuries and things going on currently,
yeah,
it might be closer to even.
yeah, but the Cardinals defense has been really bad.
No, no, I mean strictly from an offensive, offense versus offense. The talent level might be the same. Was not saying that the teams were the same.
Yeah, so I got to stick with the numbers on this one. Cards 4-2 against the spread in the last 6 games. 49ers just 2-6 in the last 8. They are 0-5 against the spread in the last 5 games against an NFC opponent. So that's my reasoning, and I'm taking the Cardinals to cover.
Yeah, I definitely like that last stat that you threw out there. Anytime, basically saying anytime they play an NFC team, which they play likely by nature more NFC teams than AFC teams. So you know while some of those one or two of those games may be a year or more out, you're still talking about games recently. So I can't think of who they played off the top of my head, but you're essentially saying that this sample size also includes recent games as well as stretching back maybe into last year or even the year prior, depending on the circumstances of it. But anytime you're talking about something 0-5, 0-6, you know, it sounds silly, but winners bet trends. That's that simple. And
Yeah, they
so
played the Vikings, the Niners, and who and then they last played the Lions in the playoffs. That was the other NFC team. They didn't cover on any of those matchups.
see, so like 0-5, definitely something that you might look at and give some legitimate thought to when you're handicapping some of these games. Now moving into my final play for the week, you know, going back to somebody that worked out for me last week, and that's Justin Jefferson. And this week I'm targeting the receiving yards in his game. Now last week I had him on the over 5.5 receptions. It took the whole game, but we got there, cashing the ticket. Now this week we're going with the over 78.5 receiving yards. Um, you know, this season alone, things have been clicking extremely well in Minnesota. Whether there's something in the water, whether Kyle Shanahan fixed Sam Darnold, not sure. Maybe it's just the fact that he might actually, for the first time in his career as a starter, have a competent offensive head coach. Um, that's highly possible given with what he was working with in New York with the Jets, and then the Matt Rule era in Carolina, which was a debacle in itself. But there was no arguing that from a physical standpoint, Sam Darnold had the potential and the capabilities to play at the NFL level. It seemed to be more the mind and the processing and being able to diagnose defenses and all those non-physical, tangible traits that seem to be so hard to find in the player. And it's quite possible that while we might be seeing Sam Darnold at his best, yes, there might be drop offs along the way. It's clear that he's already developed a connection with Justin Jefferson. If I'm not mistaken, Jefferson has a touchdown in every game so far this season. So potentially a market you might want to look at is the anytime touchdown markets for Jefferson, though you're probably going to see some juice there. Um, but yeah, you know, is this number a little bit high? Yes, but we're talking about quite possibly the best wide receiver in the league. And, there was a lot of questions coming into the season about the person throwing Justin Jefferson the ball. Well, so far through 4 games, Sam Darnold seems to be doing a pretty damn good job getting the ball to him.
Yeah, definitely. All right, for my final bet of the week, I got the New Orleans Saints plus 5.5 at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Saints have been a pretty popular pick for me. I think I've picked them a few times already, and it's worked out pretty well so far. I mean, they just covered last week, or push, like I said, cover or push, depending on the number you got. But they are 5-1 and against the spread in the last 6 games, so they're doing pretty well in that category. Except for that Eagles game, they really shown they have no problem putting up points. And Patrick Mahomes not having very good year. I mean, he's been probably having his worst year. Um, but they are undefeated. But it's just statistically, Mahomes hasn't been really great. He's been turning the ball over almost every game. Um, and they just lost Rasheed Rice for I think the season, so they're going to be limited in the passing game, as they were already limited as just because of Patrick Mahomes' play. And 5.5 points, good amount to be getting, considering the Chiefs have been in a one-score game every single week. Um, and I think the Chiefs will pull it out in the end because somehow Mahomes always seems to do that. But I think it'll be much closer than the 5.5 suggests.
Yeah, this Chiefs team is, awfully eerily similar to what we saw out of them last year, where you had legitimate reasons left and right why you wanted to fade the team overall. And I think from, a win-loss standpoint, yes, they win this game, but being able to cover that spread is a whole different conversation. As you just mentioned, basically one score games seem to be their thing. And, we saw it a lot last year where the offense seemed to be clicking or, faced with injuries or one thing or another throughout the season. And they were able to keep things going, keep their heads above water and found themselves in the Super Bowl putting on a ring at the end of the season. Um, so yeah, I definitely like the possibility of fading the Chiefs from a spread standpoint, especially when you're talking about something like 5.5, a bit of a dead number, but something that's clearly going to get you out of that 3-4 range that you quite often see come into play. Field goal, alternating field goals, touchdowns. It's a sick feeling having, 3.5, knowing they score this touchdown, they're going to be up by 4, and I need a score. Hell of a
Mm.
lot different conversation if you're sitting with something like 5, 5.5, 6, because you're talking about covering those key numbers of 3 and 4, and that can be a very powerful position. And at the beginning of the season, we saw the Saints offense coming out very strong. And I think there's a good chance we see more of that Saints offense that we saw in the first 2 weeks of the season.
All right. I think that'll be all of our bets for week number 5. I'll wrap up this show, and you can tell everybody where they can find you, DWeezy.
Yes, the good folks can find me on YouTube at Backyard Action Media and on Twitter at the Yard Bets.
All right. You can find me at NFLKid22 on Instagram and Twitter side checks. You can find me on this channel on Fridays at 3 o'clock, talking Cowboys, talking Giants, good friends, better rivals with my co host, Ferris McDonough. Tune in for that this Friday. And then, yeah, safe betting. Only bet what you can afford to lose. And we'll see you next week, as always. Um, as for now, let's get ready to make that money.